Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar focuses on ERIC for policymakers. We want to make sure you know about the resources that are available to you free of charge from ERIC. These resources are not only free, they are also easy to find and download when you need them. But before we begin, I'm going to go over a few quick housekeeping items. First, we are going to mute everyone so that we don't get feedback from your phones. If you have a question at any time, please enter it into the chat box and we will answer it during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We are going to be posting this presentation on YouTube in a few weeks and then making it accessible from the ERIC website. We'll send out a link to everyone who's registered to let you know when the video is available, and then you can share the link with others. Today, two of us will be speaking to you. I'm Erin Pollard, the Project Officer for ERIC at the U.S. Department of Education. I oversee the program from the government's perspective and set policies for the program. Judy Beck is the Deputy Project Manager on the ERIC contract. She co-leads the ERIC processing team. She's familiar with both the content in ERIC and the ERIC search tools that can help you find the information that you're looking for. Here's what we're going to be covering today. A brief introduction, then we're going to tell you what you need to know about ERIC, how ERIC can help you, and how you can get your work indexed in ERIC. Lastly, you'll have a chance to ask questions in our Q&A session. So to begin, as an introduction, I'm going to start with a quick overview of IES, or the Institute of Education Sciences. This is a sponsoring agency of ERIC and the resources that each of our centers produce that may be useful to you. IES has 4 centers that invest $615 million a year in education research. This research is all peer-reviewed and made available to the public free of charge. The most well-known center is the National Center for Education Statistics. They provide data on every single school and university in the country, as well as administer the nation's report card and international assessments like PISA. Next, we have 2 research centers, the National Center for Special Education Research and the National Center for Education Research. These centers administer grants for field-initiated research that is largely published in peer-reviewed journals. The final peer-reviewed manuscript from these journal articles are made freely available in ERIC. Last is the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance. The center does large-scale evaluations of federal programs. It also houses 4 programs that are designed to take research and make it useful to practitioners and policymakers. First, we have the Regional Educational Laboratories. The RELs work with state and district partners to conduct research and to develop tools and trainings to help users better understand research. Second is the What Works Clearinghouse. The WWC reviews existing causal research against a set of methodological standards to help schools and districts know if a policy, practice, or curricula improves student learning. They also work with practitioners and experts to develop practice guides that give concrete suggestions about how to make research findings actionable in the classroom. Third is the National Library of Education that collects historic education documents and digitizes them. These materials are made available through the final program in NCE, ERIC. And ERIC is the reason why we're here today. ERIC collects the materials developed and published by all of the IES centers, the What Works Clearinghouse, and the Regional Educational Laboratories, and makes a full text of these research products available to users around the world. We also index the full text of journal articles written by our research grantees and make them freely available. ERIC links to these records with other IES resources, including reviews by the What Works Clearinghouse and information about other IES grants. These interrelationships provide additional information and help users connect the dots between programs that they may not know about. So what is ERIC? First of all, it's a free resource. The extensive ERIC collection is available through our website at eric.ed.gov. ERIC has more than 400,000 full-text reports, papers, articles, and other materials that you can download for free. Many of these full-text materials are peer-reviewed, and many were developed to support policymakers like yourselves. The ERIC website provides an intuitive search engine to help you easily find the materials that you want. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Judy to give you the specifics about what you need to know about ERIC.
Thank you, Erin, and good afternoon, everyone. Some of you may already be familiar with ERIC. You may have used it in college, or you may be using it now and you just want to learn a little bit more. But regardless of your level of knowledge about ERIC, I want to start by clarifying a common misperception. that ERIC is a subscription service and there is a charge for using it. ERIC is sponsored by IES, as Erin has explained, but there are multiple offerings of the database available for users, including commercial versions of ERIC, such as those provided by EBSCO, ProQuest, and others. Educational institutions in your state most likely access ERIC through one of these vendors who bundle various databases. IES makes the metadata for ERIC content available for free on the ERIC website, and this metadata is downloaded and used by commercial vendors and other providers in their own search platforms. You can see the link right on the ERIC homepage. Down at the bottom, it's circled in red and says download. Just remember, it is always IES ERIC data that powers anyone else's search engines. I want to talk for a minute about some of the value-added features of the IES ERIC version. The IES-sponsored website for ERIC is free. That includes access to the full collection, search engine, the full text, and the ERIC thesaurus. In order to keep the ERIC collection fresh and growing, our content development effort identifies sources of materials that meet the ERIC selection policy criteria. Working with publishers, nonprofits, government agencies, and other entities, we acquire and index their materials and add more than 4,000 new records to ERIC each month. Also, the IES-sponsored version of ERIC has the most current content. We don't have control over how often vendors update their offering of the database. So if you used EBSCO or ProQuest or one of the other vendors providing access to ERIC in the past, know that you can still have access to ERIC's collection of resources directly through the ERIC website. Now let's see what's in ERIC, especially what might be useful to you. Broadly speaking, ERIC contains 1.7 million records. We mainly index journal articles and a wide variety of materials that are not available in other education databases, much of it known as gray literature. ERIC also contains almost 1,000 items resulting from IES grant-funded projects, which are full text in ERIC after an embargo period. ERIC covers all the topics in the field of education, from early childhood education through higher ed, disabilities and gifted education, science, mathematics, and environmental education, reading, urban and rural schools, and other key topics of importance to both SEAs and LEAs. You can see the range of topics in the slide. But remember, ERIC is not a subject matter database. That is, you will not find a physics journal, for example, but you will find materials on how physics fits into STEM programs, for example, or why students choose physics majors, and teaching practices for physics. In fact, there are at least over 45 full-text articles in ERIC specifically just on physics and STEM education alone. Let's look at a snapshot of the ERIC collection from 2018. You can see on the highlights that fully 20% of the over 48,000 records created for ERIC in that year are both displayed in full text and are peer-reviewed. But clearly, the largest group of records are for content, mostly journal articles, that is peer-reviewed but that ERIC cannot display in full text. However, each ERIC record from the past 15 years contains a link that will take you to the publisher's website and to full text there, or to information on how to obtain the article. Two other groups of materials, the records for those materials that are full text but not peer-reviewed, contain things such as conference papers and many of the reports. And there are materials that are neither full text nor peer-reviewed, such as dissertation abstracts. Now, in addition to journal articles and books, here are some of the examples of the kinds of materials you can find in ERIC. You might be especially interested in the policy papers, case studies, conference papers, hearings, data profiles, literature reviews, or other studies and reports that are available in the collection. You can see the range of things. What's not in ERIC? ERIC doesn't index everything that could be termed education related. We've already talked about ERIC not being a subject matter database, and here are some examples of some other types of materials that we do not include in the collection, including textbooks, marketing materials, or blog posts. So where does ERIC get all this content? Obviously from journal and book publishers, as we said, but we currently have 753 gray literature sources, including federal and state government agencies, university-affiliated programs, nonprofit organizations, think tanks and advocacy groups, foundations. Something that I do want to mention is that ERIC is a nonpartisan program. It's been operating since the mid-1960s, so it's gone through a lot of different administrations, but it maintains its focus and standards as outlined in the current ERIC selection policy, which you can also download from the ERIC homepage. So with that picture in mind, the kinds of materials and sources you can find in ERIC, let's see how you can search for resources. In just a second, we'll go to the ERIC website, and I'll show you how easy it is to find free, full-text materials in ERIC, including resources that were developed specifically for you as policymakers. The ERIC website has an intuitive search feature, so there's no need to run complex searches. You can run a simple search and the most relevant records will appear first, and you can then use ERIC search limiters to narrow your results. We're going to start with a search and show some initial limiters that can quickly get you to full text, peer-reviewed, and recent materials. So let's go to the ERIC website. And give me just a second here. And we will have the website come up. As soon as I click the right thing. And yes, always grateful when that works. Thank you. All right, so we're going to work through a search together. Be sure when you do go to the ERIC website that you use the HTTPS. You need the S because it is a secure website. We're going to work through a search together. Let's start and say you're interested in the topic of graduation rates. So let's go ahead and type in graduation rates. And we'll do the search. And we come up with over 9,000 results. But these are all records that contain the words graduation and rate, not necessarily related to each other. So now what we want to do is go back and enclose graduation, and we'll make it rates, in quotation marks to keep these words together. Now we'll do the search, and we've got 7,296 hits. If we're interested in only those that we can see in full text immediately from the ERIC website, we want to go up to the top of the screen and click the full text available on ERIC box. Click search, and now we have a result list of over almost 4,000 results that are full text in ERIC. To further refine the search, we could click the peer-reviewed box, also up here at the top, peer-reviewed only. Let's redo the search. And now we have 508 results of things related to graduation rates that are both peer-reviewed and full text available. I want to say just a note about the peer review flag. It was only applied to journal articles until recently, and then a subset of non-journal materials are now marked as peer-reviewed after a vetting process. So there very well can be high-quality non-journal materials that are not included when the peer-reviewed box is checked. So just keep that in mind. But 508 is still a pretty big pile of hits to go through. So suppose you only really want to see items from the last 5 years. You want to move over to the left side of the screen, and you can see that our first limiter facet is publication date. So we could check since 2015, the last 5 years. And now we're down to 219 items. Now you can scroll through and see what is available. Or you could come back over to the left side and you could look under the source limiter panel and see where the materials are from. And you'll see this is a nice mix of journal articles, IES program reports, grantee submissions, nonprofit organizations, and so on. If you want to see the full text of something, you just go over and click on Download Full Text where the PDF icon is, and voila, you have the full text. So let me show you another way to search ERIC, this time using terms from the ERIC Thesaurus of descriptors and additional terms called identifiers. In fact, last month we did an update to the thesaurus, so we now have 4,539 descriptors, or you can think of them as subject terms, and about 7,089 synonyms which lead you to the active descriptor. This controlled vocabulary of descriptors is really a hallmark of ERIC, and it can help you zero in on materials that are highly relevant to your topic. Descriptors can save you from having to weed out reports that only mention your topic in passing. You can also search using descriptors, and I'm going to show you now how to narrow a search using the descriptor limiters. Suppose you have an interest in early childhood education, but you're not sure if there's a descriptor for that or what it might be. So if you go to the ERIC homepage, you can click on the Thesaurus tab. We're searching first on the Collection tab. Let's click the Thesaurus tab, and you'll see the box says Search Thesaurus Descriptors. So let's just type in childhood. Child good. We hope they're good. And one thing I forgot to do. Be sure to include the synonyms. Now, this time they came up. They didn't come up. Let me redo this. Click the synonyms. Synonyms are in italic type, and the descriptors are actually in Roman type. You can maybe remember that by thinking of the joke. What do taxonomists include with their breakfast? Synonym rolls. So if I forgot my own joke. Anyway, be sure to click the Include Synonyms box when you're doing this. All right, we said we were interested in early childhood education, and we can see over here on the right-hand column that early childhood education is actually a descriptor. So we're going to click on that, and the descriptor page comes up. And each descriptor basically does have a page with this kind of information. You get the name of the descriptor or the term. There will be a scope note that sort of sets the parameters for what that term covers. You will also see 2 columns usually of terms, broader, narrower, and related. These are the relationship terms for the particular descriptor. But there's a really nice feature on this page, and it's right here. It's search collection using this descriptor. So you can click on this, and now we have a search result of 30,784 records that have been indexed with the term early childhood education. Now, again, by going over to the facets, the left-hand side of the page, we can perhaps look at other descriptors to further narrow our search. And suppose we're interested in the program effectiveness of early childhood education. We can go down and see there is a descriptor for program effectiveness. If we click on that, we've now reduced the results to 1,764. You can use other facets in the same way to further refine your results, choosing other descriptors that would include the first 2. Or you can even go down and look at the sources, as we've done before, authors, if there are particular people, scholars you're interested in, publication type, etc. Now, I want to call your attention to using the identifier limiters, which are down toward the bottom of these panels. And the first one is location, so we'll stop here for a minute. These search age identifiers can help you find materials that are relevant to specific locations where the research was conducted, particular laws, policies, and programs, or assessment and survey instruments. And while the assignment of the descriptors can be a little bit subjective, even with scope notes and everything else, because it calls for an analysis of the content and applying the term, the identifiers are only assigned to a record if they are specifically mentioned in the content. All of the identifiers are proper nouns. So if we look at the listings under location, for example, we see that 25 of this set, the research was actually conducted, or the piece is talking about research conducted in Florida. And if you look below, I'm going to scroll again, there's location, the laws and policies, assessments and surveys, but the very last box will tell you if any of the studies were actually reviewed by the What Works Clearinghouse. And we can see here that one of these Florida studies, of the 25 we identified through the identifiers, was reviewed by the What Works Clearinghouse. The rating is here, meets the WWC standards without reservations. If you click on this, you will come directly to that record. If you open the record and go down to the bottom, you will see that, again, the rating is here, as well as the link to the What Works Clearinghouse study page. So this goes back to what Erin was talking about earlier and the relationships between the IES programs and ERIC. There are a number of different types of linkages like that. Okay, so now we've done a general search. We've looked using descriptors and the identifiers. I do want to show you one more kind of search and show you some things that are just for you as policymakers. if we go back to the website page and go over here next to the search box to the advanced search tips, we click on this. It brings us to some interesting information, including in this gray box, a list of ERIC field names, and you can do some specific searches using those. What I'd like to do is use the field name audience. So if we type in audience, policymaker, and do a search, you'll see that we've got almost 20,000 records that are specifically targeted to you as policymakers. Now, these are articles, reports, conference papers, federal, state government publications, again, specifically targeted to policymakers. The audience tag is only applied to an ERIC record if the content specifically says the item is aimed to a specific audience. So again, you can look, once you've got this big pile of stuff, you can go back over to the left with the limiters, and working with any of those, you can narrow your results. Just don't forget that you've also got the peer-reviewed box and the full text available box as limiters as well. So if we click full text, let's just see. We've got 9,581 items in ERIC available full text immediately to you as and targeted to you as policymakers. So we've covered a lot of different search options for you to find resources in ERIC that will assist you in your work. If you'd ever like a refresher on these strategies, or if you're interested in knowing more about ERIC generally, some other features, you can go to the bottom of the page and you will see the multimedia link. If you click on that, it brings you to the multimedia page. And here you're going to find infographics, videos, the recordings of past webinars on various topics, covering basics of ERIC, searching, the thesaurus, and information about the ERIC collection, and more. So be sure to check out those resources as well. So before we go to your questions, we've actually got a question for you. Does ERIC have your materials? If you're with a State Department of Education or a local education agency, we would very much like to include your publications and reports in ERIC. ERIC adds new sources of content periodically, and if you would like your agency or program's materials reviewed, contact ERIC requests at ed.gov, right there on the screen. Include a general description, the kinds of materials you produce, and a link to their location on your website. So now I'm going to turn the webinar back to Erin for your questions and a wrap-up.
Thanks, Judy. We hope this presentation was helpful and that you'll give ERIC a try next time you need resources to help you with your work. So now we're going to take a few questions. I'm going to ask if we can change this back to show the ERIC demo screen on the website. So the first question we have is about how does ERIC determine peer review, especially for our non-journal materials. As Judy had said earlier, ERIC will flag peer-reviewed journal articles as well as non-journal articles if the material is actually peer-reviewed. And the answer to this was we spent a long time trying to figure out what was peer-reviewed, what is peer-reviewed, what makes sense, because a lot of academic databases only consider journals peer-reviewed. But we, as part of the Institute of Education and Sciences, have all of our reports that we, the government, put out go through a rigorous peer review process that most of our authors have said that they would much prefer to go through a journal process. It is certainly as rigorous, if not more rigorous, than a journal. So we didn't want to discriminate against our own publications. And we also knew that there were other organizations that had non-journal publications that were peer-reviewed. So publication sources can go through an application process and where they provide information about what their peer review process is, and we match it against our standards in our selection policy that says that we look to see the minimum of what we would consider a peer review. And we actually have a whole video on that. I think it's under the collections part of ERIC. That would be, if we scroll down, I think that it is, how is peer review determined? Yes. How does ERIC assign the peer review flag? And we're not going to play it now because I don't think that we can get the audio to play in real time. But I suggest checking that out because it's actually a really interesting process. But we are confident that everything flagged in ERIC is actually peer reviewed. All right, so let's see. Do we have other questions? And please use your chat box to answer and ask any questions. The next question I see is, Eric going to make this available after the presentation? Yes, we're recording this. We're going to post this to YouTube, and it will be made available in this section, and we're going to send you out a link when it's available. Okay. So now we see someone's asking for an example of how to do a search, and it says, I'd like to see how other states have put together discipline policies and other similar materials. What's the best way to search for something like that?
Oh, you want me to give that a try?
Sorry, that's on you.
Okay,
You have the computer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do what we've done before. Let's type in discipline policy. And we'll go ahead and put that in quotes. Keep those words together. Where's that darn? There's the key. All right. So let's go ahead and looks like with discipline policy, we're getting a result set of over 2,800 items. Now, if you're interested in particular states, again, we'll go back over here to the facets, and you can also, hit the more button, and it'll give you the fuller list. You can see the full list of states that are specifically mentioned, talking about discipline policies, and you can click on any ones that you're interested in. You will notice that there is a United States identifier. I just want to mention that that's basically used if the United States is being compared to another country or is in partnership with another country. So that might be a good way to look for those.
Thank you. So next, how is the ERIC website different to search on than my university, than a commercial database? And if you're using, I don't know what your library subscribes to. My guess is it's EBSCO and possibly others, probably ProQuest. What those providers do is they download the ERIC metadata, which is at the bottom of our field. We have this download link. So you can be just like EBSCO and download our metadata. It will take a long time to do so, but you could stand up your own version of ERIC. What you would see here is that the most recent version is January 2019, but we added records actually yesterday, which is given this presentation a little bit of some quirks because we have had records newly released, and our numbers of what we thought have gone up. So we're always adding to our collection, but we don't always update our files. We try to update them quarterly. So you'll get more recent content in ERIC. What some of the subscription-based databases are doing is they're also then buying the rights to display other PDFs. So you can download, so they may have subscriptions to journal articles, so you'll be more likely to find the full text there. But depending on how your university is set up, when you do a search in ERIC, you're going to see a direct link if ERIC can't display the PDF. And depending on how your subscriptions work, you would then go to the journal page where you could probably view that. Some subscription databases have different search functionalities. They use an older type of search called Boolean, which is lots of ands, ors, nots, designed to get a really concrete set of terms and to get a concrete search result list, while ERIC is designed to be more like Google, and we don't care how many pages of results. Our goal is to get the best ones to the top. So then the next question, you would think that I had this planted by a colleague. It says, could you flag ERIC listed studies to whether or not they meet the 4 different ESSA tiers of evidence? So for those of you who are not living in ESSA land, ESSA is Every Student Succeeds Act. This is a new version of No Child Left Behind, and all studies are required for these grant competitions to show an intervention works. You can either have strong, moderate, or promising evidence. So what ERIC has is, can I use your computer, Judy?
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to go on a little field trip. So first thing what we are going to do is we're going to just search for reviewed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the advanced search tips. And with the clearinghouse, what we have in ERIC is our goal is to provide access to research. What we don't do is we don't rate studies to the ESSA evidence tier standards. We feel like that is the job of our sister program, the What Works Clearinghouse. So what you can do is you can see what studies meet clearinghouse standards, and if they meet with reservations, that their evidence for tier 2, without reservations, their evidence for tier 1. And if you go down to the bottom of any study that meets standards without reservations or meets with, you can click on the intervention page, the study page from the clearinghouse. And if this works, this study doesn't have a multi-site. So part of what ESSA has is you are required to also have a large multi-site sample. And what I'm hoping to be is that, yes, okay, so this is not large and multi-site sample. But what will happen here, if this works the way that we want, is you would see a big button here that says might meet ESSA tier 1, might meet ESSA tier 2. What you would then be responsible for doing is knowing whether or not the study meets the local context, which is part of ESSA. So let me just try one more to see if this works, and if it doesn't, we'll go on. Now, we have considered adding these ratings to ERIC, but we think it is a better for us just to link to the clearinghouse because they are the experts. All right, so this is not what we want. Okay, so if you are, we're going to just click on one last one, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to show you. Okay. Okay, so this one doesn't have it, but you'll see that there will be a flag here if this does have the sample characteristics, and then you can see if this meets the appropriate sample, if it's the right kind of, if it matches your student body by going to the sample characteristics tab on the clearinghouse. So that's kind of in the weeds, but we are always looking for ways that we can improve and provide the kinds of information that users would want. So do we have other questions? Okay. I'll just give it one more minute. Okay, so the last question I think I see, and something that could pop up, is if our reports and policy documents are reviewed and accepted to be in ERIC, how would we get them to you? We don't have a lot of available staff time. And yes, we can help you with that. So there's several ways for us to obtain your documents, and our preference is to have our team go out to your websites, gather any documents, and put them in ERIC without you having to send us anything. Our reason for that is that we know that you all are busy, and that sending stuff to ERIC is probably going to fall pretty low on your to-do list. And we want our material to be current so other people can learn from you. and what the work that you're doing, so we can replicate this across the country. We also accept material through secure FTP and email, but our preferred way is through site download. All right. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming to our webinar today. If you think of any other questions for Eric, please feel free to send us an email at ericrequests@ed.gov. You can also find that email through the contact us link. So thank you.